The Ranch of Silence, where even animals dare not roam. There is a place where the wind doesn't blow, where the trees don't sway, where even the crows, those birds unafraid of death, detour for miles to avoid flying overhead. The residents of nearby towns call this place the Ranch of Silence, and when they pronounce this name, they do so in hushed tones, as if afraid the earth itself might hear them. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, this property was known as Fazenda Esperanza, a thriving cattle ranch in the Mato Grosso countryside. 60 years ago, more than 200 head of cattle grazed the land. Gleaming horses galloped through the fields. Chickens scratched in the yard. Life throbbed there until the night everything stopped. Clara Mendez parked her truck at the ranch's entrance and felt a shiver run down her spine. At 32, the veterinarian had seen it all in her career: injured animals, rare diseases, cruel neglect. But she had never felt anything like this. The silence was wrong. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was something deeper, more visceral, as if the air itself were suffocating. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked Marcos, his assistant, from the passenger seat. His fingers drummed nervously on the dashboard. Clara looked at the yellowed envelope in her hands. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, sent by a lawyer from a small town called Villa das Almas. The message was simple and disturbing. She had inherited Rancho do Silencio from a great aunt she hadn't even known existed, Herminia Mendez. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like an echo of whispered conversations at family gatherings that ended abruptly when the children entered the room. "It's my property now," Clara replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I'd need to at least see what I inherited." They got out of the truck. The iron gate was ajar, creaking slightly with a wind Clara couldn't feel on her skin. The red dirt road stretched for about 200 meters to a 2-story colonial house, with peeling walls and broken windows that stared at them like empty eyes. But it wasn't the house that caught Clara's attention. It was what was around her: skeletons, hundreds of them. Cattle bones scattered across the fields, some still with bits of dried leather attached. Horse skeletons slumped in grotesque poses. Skulls of chickens, pigeons, even what appeared to be dog and cat bones, all perfectly preserved, as if they had been naturally mummified by the earth itself. "My God," Marcos whispered. "What happened here?" Clara was already kneeling beside a cow skeleton, examining the bones with her trained eyes. There are no predator marks, no signs of bone disease. It's as if they simply fell where they were. All at the same time? It seemed so. A sound broke the silence. They both froze. It was a soft, rhythmic creak. Clara turned slowly and saw it, an old windmill behind the house, its blades slowly turning. But there was no wind. The house was locked, but the key the lawyer had sent opened the front door with suspicious ease, as if the lock had been recently oiled. Impossible, Clara thought. Herminia had died 3 months ago. Who was taking care of the property? The interior was a tomb of memories. Furniture covered in white sheets. Portraits on the walls showed a woman with an intense gaze at different ages. In one photo, she was young, smiling, surrounded by prize-winning cows at a show. In another, older one, her smile had disappeared, replaced by an expression of almost fanatical determination. "Clara, you need to see this," Marcos called from the living room. The walls were covered with newspaper clippings, hundreds of them. Clara walked closer, feeling her stomach tighten as she read the headlines. Fazenda Esperanza wins for the 10th consecutive year. Herminia Mendez, the queen of Mato Grosso cattle. Secret of success. Farmer refuses to reveal methods, but there were other more recent clippings with a different tone. Neighbors report strange rituals at Fazenda Esperanza. Animals are beginning to disappear from nearby properties. Local priest calls for investigation into demonic practices, and then the final headline, in bold letters. Tragedy. All the animals at Fazenda Esperanza die in one night. Herminia Mendes disappears. The date, June 15th, 1964. "Wait," Clara muttered, picking up another, more recent clipping. "She died in July of this year, but this says she disappeared in 1964. How can that be?" Marcos pointed to a framed photograph on the fireplace. It was recent, digital, printed on modern photographic paper. It showed Herminia, obviously elderly, standing in front of the house. But there was something deeply wrong with the image. Behind her, visible in the house's windows, were figures, dozens of them. Dark shapes that seemed to be watching the woman from the windows. "Look at the date," Marco said, his voice shaking. "June 14th, 2024, the day before she died." "She's back," Clara whispered. "After 60 years, she's back." They found the diary in the master bedroom, hidden inside a locked chest under the bed. The wood of the chest was covered with strange, deeply engraved symbols. Clara recognized some of them from her readings on Brazilian folklore, but others were completely alien. Her hands trembled as she opened the leather notebook. The first entry was from 1960. Dad always said there was something special about this land, that the animals grew stronger here, healthier. I thought it was just the rich soil, the clean water. But today, when that old bull finally died of old age, I buried him behind the barn like we always do. And at night I saw him. He was standing in the field, grazing as if nothing had happened. I walked closer. It wasn't a hallucination. It was him, solid, real. But his eyes were empty. Clara turned the page, her heart racing. "I have experimented. I have found that any animal buried in this soil comes back. Not as it was before, different, obedient, tireless. They never eat. They never drink. They just work. My cattle now produce 3 times as much milk. My horses never tire. It is a miracle. A gift from God." More pages. "The years passing, 1963. The neighbors are asking questions. Father Augusto came today, said there are rumors I sold my soul to the devil. What an idiot. It's not the devil, it's the land. This land was sacred long before Christ. The Indians knew. They never built here. They never hunted here. They called it the place where spirits are trapped. But I discovered how to use this power. 1964, June 10th. Something is wrong. The animals are changing. They don't obey anymore. I saw a cow attack another cow yesterday. They never do that. And the eyes, they used to be empty, but now there's something inside them. Something that watches me, that watches us all. June 14th, 1964. It's tonight. I can feel it. They're going to turn on me. I've got them trapped in the barns and corrals, but they're getting violent, breaking down gates. I have to leave, but I can't. The earth won't let me. Every time I try to climb out the gate, something pulls me back. I feel like roots are growing out of my feet, trapping me here. Forgive me for what I've done. Forgive me for what the entry ended abruptly. The ink smeared as if the hand had been violently ripped from the paper. The next few pages were blank, until the last entry, recent. The ink still looked fresh. July 2024, 60 years. It took 60 years, but I finally broke free. I fled to the city, lived a lifetime away from here. I married, had a daughter, and grew old gracefully. But the land didn't forget. It called me back. Every night in my dreams, I heard the silence of that place. And I knew that one day I would have to return, to finish what I started, to close the portal I opened. But I discovered something terrible. You cannot close what should never have been opened. This will be my last night. By morning, I will be dead, and the land will have what it wants. I ask only that none of my family come here. Please, don't come here. Clara closed the diary, tears streaming down her face. She tried to warn me. Clara. Marcos's voice was strange, distant. Look outside. She looked up at the window and felt her blood run cold. The skeletons were moving. It wasn't possible. Clara was a woman of science. But there it was, impossible to deny, the skeletons of cattle, horses, chickens, all beginning to reassemble themselves. Bones sliding across the red earth, connecting with dry cracks that echoed in the still air. We need to leave. Now! Marcos was already running for the door, but when she tried to open it, the handle wouldn't budge. It was locked. Impossible, Clara thought. They hadn't locked it from the inside. The back door! Clara shouted, and they both ran through the house, locked too, the windows, all locked. And when Marcos tried to break one with a chair, the glass didn't shatter. It simply held, as if it were made of steel. No, no, no. Marcos was panicking, hitting the window repeatedly. Clara forced herself to breathe, to think. The diary! Herminia had written about a portal, about closing something. There had to be a way. She ran back into the room, grabbed the diary again, and flipped through it frantically. There had to be something. Some clue. A piece of paper fell out from between the pages. A handwritten letter addressed to her. Clara, if you're reading this, it means I failed. The earth brought you here just as it brought me back. You carry my blood, and the earth recognizes that. It wants replacement. It always wants replacement. There's only one way to break the cycle. In the main barn, there's a well covered by boards. It's the source, the portal. My grandfather discovered it in 1890, but he didn't understand what it was. I was arrogant enough to use its power, and I paid the price. To close the portal, you must feed it something it values. Life. Not stolen or perverted life, but life freely given. That's why I've returned, to offer mine. But I fear it won't be enough. That an old, tired life won't satisfy the earth's hunger. Forgive me for putting you in this position, but you must choose your life or the lives of all those the earth will continue to bear. Because it won't stop. It never stops. And eventually, it will reach the cities. The millions who live beyond this ranch. The choice is yours. No signature. No need. Clara heard Marcos scream from downstairs. She ran to the stairs and saw the skeletons had reached the house. They weren't trying to get in. They simply stood there, hundreds of them, their empty eye sockets fixed on the windows, watching, waiting. What do they want? Marcos gasped, leaning against the wall, as far away from the windows as possible. Me, Clara said, her voice surprisingly calm. They want me. She told him everything. The diary, the letter, the portal. Then let's find another way, Marcos insisted. There has to be another way. Blow up the well, call for help, anything but that, Clara looked out the window. The skeletons remained motionless, but now she noticed something new. Others were gathering, skeletons emerging from the earth itself, ancient. Some so ancient they barely seemed human. How old was this place? How many things had died and been trapped here? You saw how we tried to get out, Clara said softly. The land won't let us. And even if it did, even if we managed to escape, it would continue, it would spread. His phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. Marcos tried his. Nothing. Hours passed. The sun began to set, and with the darkness, the skeletons began moving again. Not toward the house. In circles. An ancient ritual. Clara could now hear a sound she hadn't noticed before. A low, almost subliminal hum coming from the earth itself. It wasn't sound, he realized. It was vibration. The portal was singing. Marcos, Clara said, turning to her assistant. I need you to promise me something. No, I won't promise anything that involves you sacrificing yourself. Marcos. She took his hands. You have a wife. 2 kids. I have cats. Elderly parents who barely speak to me. No serious relationship in years. I've dedicated my life to saving animals. Let me save people now. Clara, you must tell the story. After I close the portal, you must make sure no one else in my family comes here. That this property is sealed, burned, made inaccessible, promise. Tears streamed down Marcos's face. He nodded slowly. At midnight, the doors opened. Clara didn't need to touch them. They simply opened, inviting, like the mouth of a predator. The skeletons moved away, creating a path to the main barn. We can still try something else, Marcos whispered, but they both knew it was a lie. Clara walked through the door. The air outside was heavy, thick. Each step seemed to require tremendous willpower. Skeletons flanked her on either side, their bones creaking softly as if expectant. The barn was immense, much larger than it appeared from the outside. In the center, just as Herminia had described, was a pile of rotting boards covering something. Clara could feel the power emanating from beneath them. Her bones vibrated with the resonance. She knelt down and began removing the boards. Marcos came to help her, working silently. When the last board was removed, they both stepped back. The well wasn't deep, maybe 10 feet, but there was no bottom he could see, only darkness. A darkness that moved, that undulated, that watched them with a hungry, ancient intelligence. "It's beautiful," Clara whispered, and realized with horror that she really did. There was something hypnotic about that emptiness, something that promised peace, an end to pain, an end to choice. "Clara, no!" Marcos pulled her back. "You're under the influence. He's manipulating you." She blinked, the fog in her mind momentarily clearing. He was right. The portal was in her head, showing her images, promises, lies. "Marcos," she said, turning to him one last time, "thank you. For everything. For the years working together. For being my friend when I wouldn't let anyone else get close. Promise me you'll live. Live completely. For both of us." Before he could respond, before his courage could fail, Clara turned and jumped. Falling through the portal wasn't what she expected. There was no sensation of falling, just transition. One moment she was in the barn. The next, she was standing in an endless field under a starless sky. I wasn't alone. Herminia was there, younger than in the photos, wearing her 1960s dress. But her face was the same, tired, regretful. "You came," the apparition said. "I prayed you wouldn't. I had no choice. There is always a choice. I made mine. I chose power over wisdom, and we have paid the price for generations." Other figures began to appear, dozens, hundreds, people dressed in clothing from different eras. Indigenous people in traditional garb, Portuguese colonizers, enslaved Africans, 19th century farmers, all with the same expression, trapped. "This place," Herminia explained, "is not a portal. It is a wound, a rupture between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Opened millennia ago when something terrible happened here. The ancient inhabitants tried to heal it with rituals, with sacrifices, but they failed, and the wound only grew, hungry, always hungry. Then my sacrifice won't close anything," Clara realized, feeling despair rise in her throat. "It'll just trap me here like you." "No," a new voice said. An elderly man emerged from the crowd. He wore simple leather clothes, and there was something ancient in his eyes. Very ancient. "I am the first," he said. "The shaman who, in his arrogance, thought he could heal this wound with his own life. But a sacrifice made in desperation has no power. It only feeds hunger. For centuries we have watched others make the same mistake, including you, Herminia." He turned to Clara. "But you're different. You didn't come out of arrogance. You didn't come out of desperation. You came out of love. Love for that man crying for you up there. Love for strangers you'll never meet. That love can heal. How?" Clara asked. "You need to forgive," he said simply. "Forgive those who caused this. Forgive yourself for not finding another way. And most importantly, you need to forgive the earth itself. It is not evil. It is wounded. It is in pain. It needs to be freed as much as we do." Clara looked around at all those desperate faces, centuries of suffering, and she felt something break inside her. Not despair, compassion. She closed her eyes and thought of every animal she had ever cared for, every wounded creature she had healed, every pain she had witnessed and tried to ease. And she extended that compassion down into the earth itself. "I forgive," she whispered. "All of you. And you too, wounded earth. Rest, finally rest." Light exploded from his chest. Marcos never knew exactly what happened that night. One moment Clara was jumping into the well. The next, he was waking up outside the barn, sunlight rising on the horizon. The skeletons were gone, completely, as if they'd never existed. The earth around them was fresh, turned, as if freshly plowed, and something was growing. Tiny green shoots were emerging everywhere. The well was closed, not covered, closed. The earth had melted over it, leaving only smooth soil, and in the center, where the well had been, grew a single tree. Small still, but clearly old. Its leaves were a vibrant green Marcos had never seen before, and on its trunk, preserved like a scar, was something that made him cry, the initials CM carved into the living wood. Clara had disappeared, but somehow Marcos knew she wasn't trapped. She was free, finally free. He kept his promise. He told the story to the authorities, to Clara's family, to anyone who would listen. The property was sealed off and turned into an environmental reserve. The mansion was demolished, but the tree remained, protected by law. Years later, when Marcos returned for the last time before retiring, he found something extraordinary. The tree had grown, and around it an entire forest had blossomed. Animals had returned. Birds sang. A deer grazed peacefully near the central tree. Life had returned to the Rancho do Silencio. And as Marcos stood there, feeling the gentle breeze move the leaves, he could have sworn he heard laughter. Light, happy, free. Clara had found peace, and in her sacrifice, she had healed not just a wound in the earth, but the trauma of centuries. The portal was closed, the hunger satisfied, and for the first time in millennia, the earth could finally rest. But Marcos took with him one last secret, something he never told anyone. The morning he woke up, there was a letter in his shirt pocket, written in Clara's handwriting. Marcos, if you're reading this, it worked. I don't know exactly what happened here, but I know I'm at peace. Don't cry for me. I lived a good life, and I died doing something that mattered. Take care of my family, my cats, and live, Marcos. Live fully. That's the only sacrifice that truly matters. Not wasting the time we have, and if you ever have doubts, if you ever feel alone, come to the tree. I'll still be here, in a way. Protecting, caring, doing what I've always done. With eternal love, Clara. Marcos folded the letter carefully and put it back in his pocket. He touched the tree trunk one last time. Thank you, friend, he whispered, for everything. And as he turned to leave, a single leaf fell from the branch above him. Not because the wind blew, not because it was time to fall, but because it was a farewell, one last goodbye, and Marcos smiled through his tears. Because he knew it wasn't the end. It was just a transformation, and transformation, after all, is the only thing truly eternal.